Rebekah Christian Gould was born in 1982, into a family rooted in strong values, love and resilience. Her upbringing was a blend of cultural depth and moral grounding, shaped by her parents, sisters and a supportive community in Texas. She wasn't just another face in the crowd. Rebekah had a light that stood out from an early age. A piano prodigy with a curious mind, she developed a love for classical music, reading and helping others. In her high school years she wasn't just academically gifted, she was deeply charismatic. Her presence left an impression on everyone she encountered. Teachers admired her intellect and poise. Friends loved her energy and warmth. And yet Rebekah was also introspective, someone who carried wisdom beyond her years. After high school she enrolled in college and began moving between schools as she searched for the right academic fit. Eventually she was pursuing studies at Northwest Arkansas Community College, aiming to become a professional in the medical or health field. This ambition fit her personality. Deeply compassionate, eager to assist those in need and emotionally intelligent. She maintained close ties with her family, often visiting her sister and speaking regularly with her father. But as many young adults do, she also had a complicated romantic past. One figure from that past, Casey McCullough, remained a close friend and confidant, though their relationship had faded from romantic into more platonic territory. It was during a trip to see Casey that Rebekah's promising life would be tragically cut short. Chapter 2, The Last Days, Melbourne, Arkansas. In September 2004, Rebekah planned a brief trip to Melbourne, a remote rural town in Izard County, Arkansas. The town, nestled in the rugged hills of the Ozark Mountains, seemed like a quiet and restful place, a far cry from the danger that would soon engulf her. Her reason for the visit wasn't random. She intended to stay with Casey McCullough, her former boyfriend, at his family's residence located on Arkansas Highway 9 South, in a secluded area away from town. The McCulloughs owned multiple properties in the area, and Casey lived in a small house owned by his father. While the relationship between Rebekah and Casey had ended romantically, they had remained friends. Many who knew them described the relationship as complicated but cordial. On the evening of September 19, 2004, Rebekah stayed at Casey's house. It appeared to be an ordinary night. The next morning, September 20th, Casey reportedly left early for work, sometime around 8 a.m., claiming Rebekah was still in bed when he departed. Later that morning, Rebekah was seen alive for what would be the final time. She entered a local convenience store, bought a soda and snack, and appeared calm and composed. The surveillance footage shows no signs of distress. This was around 9 a.m. After that, she vanished without a trace. Chapter 3. Suspicions mount. The first signs of foul play. When Rebekah missed appointments later that day, her family immediately knew something was wrong. She wasn't someone who disappeared without explanation. Her phone rang unanswered. Texts went ignored. She failed to meet her sister as planned. On September 21st, Rebekah was officially reported missing. Police began investigating and soon found her white car abandoned along the highway, less than 2 miles from McCullough's house. Inside were her cell phone, purse and other belongings, items she would never leave behind voluntarily. Attention quickly turned to the last place she had been seen, Casey's house. There, investigators found disturbing clues. There were visible bloodstains on the mattress, on the bedroom floor and in several parts of the home. Some appeared to have been partially cleaned, suggesting an effort to cover up a crime. Yet there was no sign of forced entry, no indication of robbery, and no solid leads. Despite all this, Casey McCullough was never charged and police remained vague about their suspicions. The small-town atmosphere, combined with the fact that Casey was the son of a former doctor and respected family, created an air of unease and speculation. Many believed early mistakes in processing the crime scene hampered the case for years. Chapter 4. A gruesome discovery. The body in the woods. On September 27, 2004, a week after Rebekah disappeared, a volunteer search team made a harrowing discovery. Down a steep wooded embankment about 5 miles from McCullough's house, they found Rebekah's decomposing body. She had been dumped in a ravine partially covered by brush. The location was remote, indicating that the killer knew the area intimately. The autopsy revealed that she died from blunt force trauma to the head, consistent with being struck with a heavy object, later believed to be a piano leg. There were no defensive wounds, which suggested she had either been caught by surprise or was incapacitated at the time of the attack. Her clothes were partially removed, though no evidence of sexual assault was confirmed. The motive remained unclear. Was it rage? Jealousy? A cover-up? Whoever killed Rebekah not only murdered her but tried to hide her body, cover up the evidence and disappear without a trace. And for a long time that plan worked. Chapter 5. 16 years of cold trails and online theories. For over a decade and a half the case stagnated. There were no arrests, no solid suspects, and no closure. Rebekah's family, particularly her father and sister, never stopped pushing for answers. But small-town investigations have limits. Lack of resources, outdated techniques, and sometimes lack of urgency. That's when independent voices stepped in. In 2018, true crime journalist Catherine Townsend launched her podcast, Hell and Gone, and chose Rebekah's case for Season 1. Over the course of her investigation, she re-interviewed people close to the case, retraced Rebekah's final steps, and consulted with retired law enforcement experts. Townsend's podcast rekindled public interest. Listeners across the country began diving into the case, uncovering inconsistencies in police statements and discrepancies in timelines. Online forums like Web Sleuths and Reddit exploded with theories. Why had McCullough's house not been sealed off as a crime scene immediately? Who else had been staying there that weekend? Why hadn't DNA testing revealed more? One name began to emerge quietly. William "Billy" Miller, a friend of Casey McCullough's who had also been in the house around the time Rebekah died. But it would take 2 more years for that lead to bear fruit. Chapter 6. The Breakthrough: William Miller's Arrest. In a stunning turn, on November 7, 2020, law enforcement arrested William Miller in Oregon, 16 years after the crime. Miller had returned to Arkansas from the Philippines and had traveled back and forth for years, living in the shadows of obscurity. Investigators had re-examined the case with modern forensics and enhanced interviews. A tip led them to Miller, and during an interrogation he confessed to killing Rebekah. According to Miller, he and Rebekah got into an argument inside the McCullough residence. He claimed he hit her with a piano leg, panicked, tried to clean up the scene and dumped her body. His confession was shocking, not only for its detail but for the coldness with which he described the act. The object used to kill her, reportedly taken from inside the house, had never been recovered. Still, the confession aligned with previous forensic evidence and blood pattern analysis. Miller was charged with first-degree murder. Chapter 7. Conviction and Legacy: Remembering Rebekah. In October 2022, William Miller pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 40 years in prison. He offered no public apology and showed little remorse. Rebekah's family, while relieved that someone was finally held accountable, remained haunted by the reality that it had taken 16 years to reach this moment. Her sister's emotional statements during sentencing revealed the profound emotional scars the murder had left on those who loved Rebekah. Today, Rebekah Gould's name lives on, not only as a symbol of lost potential, but also as a testament to relentless pursuit of justice. Her case highlights how failures in early investigations, small-town politics, and misplaced assumptions can bury the truth for years. It also shows the power of journalism, podcasts, and social media in breaking cold cases open. Chapter 8. The Confession: Reconstructing the Final Moments. When William "Billy" Miller was finally brought in for questioning in 2020, the weight of the years seemed to collapse under pressure. After 16 years of silence, misinformation, and distance, he broke. The confession, obtained by Arkansas State Police, was reportedly recorded and signed. According to Miller, the events of September 20, 2004, played out like a sudden storm of rage, confusion, and impulse. He claimed that he and Rebekah were alone in the house that morning, and they had a disagreement. The details of the argument remain partly unclear, but Miller suggested that it escalated unexpectedly. In a moment of fury, he struck Rebekah multiple times with a piano leg, a detached piece of furniture found inside the McCullough home. She collapsed, bleeding and unconscious. Panic overtook him. Instead of calling for help, he began cleaning the scene, wiping up blood, moving her body, and eventually wrapping her in bed sheets. Then he loaded her into a vehicle and drove her out into the remote Ozark Hills, dumping her body over a ravine in the dense woods off a rural road. This sequence of actions pointed to more than just panic. It suggested deliberation, a strong desire to evade justice, and a calculated disposal of the evidence. Miller's attempts to clean the scene, hide the murder weapon, and escape detection for 16 years were chilling in their efficiency. He showed no remorse during the confession, only a sense of inevitability, as if the weight of guilt had finally become impossible to bear, or perhaps the reality that he could no longer hide in plain sight. Chapter 9: The Courtroom and the Faces of Justice. In October 2022, Miller stood in court in Izard County, facing the family of the woman whose life he had brutally taken. The trial was brief as Miller entered a guilty plea, sparing the family a long and painful jury trial. But the sentencing was not without emotional gravity. Rebekah's sister, Tiffany Gould, gave a victim impact statement that was both devastating and dignified. Through tears, she spoke of the years lost, the torment of unanswered questions, and the image of her sister's final moments that haunted her dreams. Their father, Larry Gould, a former U.S. Army colonel, had spent 16 years lobbying law enforcement, media, and journalists to keep the case alive. He sat quietly, his stoic posture betraying the lifelong weight of a father's grief. The judge sentenced Miller to 40 years in prison for first-degree murder. Under Arkansas law, he would be eligible for parole after serving 70% of his sentence, 28 years, meaning he could walk free in his 70s assuming good behavior. This drew criticism from some observers who believed the penalty was insufficient for such a brutal, deliberate crime. But for Rebekah's family, the most important thing had finally happened. Someone had taken responsibility. The name and face of the killer were no longer anonymous shadows in their nightmares. The legal system had finally acknowledged their pain. Chapter 10: Who was William "Billy" Miller? A shadow hiding in the open. For years, William Miller remained a background figure, rarely mentioned in online forums or news coverage about the case. This raises a chilling question: how could a murderer stay hidden for so long? Born in Arkansas, Miller was an acquaintance of Casey McCullough and had stayed at the McCullough house in the days around Rebekah's death. He was not unknown to law enforcement. He had prior arrests for petty crimes and disorderly conduct, but nothing that suggested violent tendencies. He had moved around frequently and spent time abroad in the Philippines, where he met a woman and started a family. He returned to the U.S. sporadically. What allowed him to blend in was his low profile, his ability to disappear, and perhaps most of all, the lack of follow-through from local investigators in the early stages. His name reportedly came up in 2004, but without hard evidence or strong witness testimony, it slipped into obscurity. It's worth noting that Miller was not initially a primary suspect, nor was his presence at the house rigorously scrutinized. There were no fingerprints matched, no DNA samples linked, and the blood evidence at the crime scene could not be definitively traced to him at the time. In 2004, forensic science lacked the precision it has today and crucial opportunities were missed. Some speculate that Miller's mental health played a role in the murder. Potential impulse control issues, untreated trauma, or psychopathic tendencies that were never diagnosed. Others believe it was simply an act of brutal cowardice, motivated by rage or fear of being exposed. Chapter 11: Systemic Failures. Why it took 16 years. The Rebekah Gould case is a tragic example of how early investigative missteps can bury justice under layers of delay. From the beginning, the handling of the crime scene was problematic. Casey McCullough's house, the last known location Rebekah was alive, was not sealed off immediately as a crime scene. Multiple people had access to the home after the murder, potentially contaminating crucial evidence. Initial suspects were not questioned thoroughly enough. Blood samples were collected, but not matched to suspects due to limitations in local lab capabilities. Local law enforcement did not have the forensic tools or specialized homicide units that a larger city might. Over time, public pressure faded. With no new evidence and no confession, the case grew cold. But it was the emergence of podcasts like Hell and Gone, as well as dedicated advocacy from Rebekah's family, that forced the Arkansas State Police to reopen the file and apply modern techniques to old evidence.